It was in reference to the blankets with the young children, the 6 weeks, to 6-month-old children with swaddling. And, Mr. Festus was going to do some research, and I can't think of who the other lady that was there.
Back to sleep, she was from.
Yeah, and she was going to do some research to see about changing that because the importance of swaddling for infants in a nursery school.
I really did not, I haven't gone through to discuss that or anything. I know that that language was taken straight from, I think, the CDC's recommendations. We're hesitant to take and alter something of CDC's. I mean, sometimes it makes sense if y'all are trying to, if we need to further clarify something, but the department is very hesitant to go and say we will allow something that CDC says that this is specifically how it should be reviewed, because if something happened in your center, then we allowed it or we caused it. So I have not addressed that with the providers. I think it's something that can be taken up at a later time if you would like us to.
I would, please.
Okay. The other area that there was a lot of confusion, there was a lot of comment on, was cribs. There was a lot of, thought that the Department of Health was enforcing, I think, requirements of the Department of Human Services or one of the other enters and actors programs, and the fact that we had put that each infant had to have a crib. In essence, when you looked at that and you looked at the fact that the cribs, in order to meet what y'all needed to do, was it had to be 36 inches apart from end to end. What it basically did was it took up all of the space that providers have in their facilities. And I do know that the providers did, many of them said, you know, we will deal with this, we will work with this. But then what they came back to us was some logical explanation of really what they needed here. And the providers we talked to further reinforced that. Something that I don't know that we as a department considered was the transitioning that is necessary once you've got an infant. The transitioning phase from the infant to the time you move them out of that infant room into the 1-year-old room. You know, that in essence, you're gonna keep them in a crib for the whole first 12 months, and then one day you're gonna tell this infant, oh, by the way, you're now going into your next class, your next room, and at that point, that child is either put on a cot or they're put on a mat. Somewhere we lost that part of the logic when we made our regulations. And that was a big discussion among the providers that we talked about, is that actually there is, you know, we're being forced to take an infant from one level to another without transitioning that child. So what was brought forth was they asked us to allow the transitioning. A second thing was the packing place. The packing place was discussed, I know, even in this group, prior to us, you know, moving it out from that. But there was a request again that we bring the packing place back in, basically because it did provide a smaller size for the facilities. And the department's concern with the packing place, even at that point in time that it was discussed, was assuring that they're kept sanitary and clean because of the material. However, that is the responsibility of every provider. Whether it's a crib, whether it's a packing plate, whatever, that material has got to be maintained clean. So, I mean, I did understand it from that, but I further, after talking to the providers, I understood what they were actually asking us, why they were asking to use a mat. Not just because they didn't have the room, they were asking us to use the mat because they have a period of time that they need to transition this child that's actually crawling. So once we understood that, we just still had a lot of discussion regarding the mat, what could possibly be acceptable, you know, at this stage in the child's development. So what we came up with was all infants shall have a crib or a commercially purchased packing plate designated for the purpose of sleeping. Mobile infants at a minimum of 8 months. There's very rare, now maybe I'm wrong, but I know my grandchildren didn't start crawling until about 8 months. It's very rare prior to 8 months that you're gonna have a child that is gonna be crawling that needs to be on the floor. that much time in order to be crawling and mobile. It's the last thing the department wants is a child to always be kept in a crib 8 hours a day. That was never the intent of the department when we said each infant shall have a crib. But in essence, what it came across was I was telling a provider, in your room, you've got to have 5 cribs lined up, and that baby has got to be either in that crib or else you gotta be holding it, more or less. And that was never the intent. The intent is for a child to be on the floor crawling when they get to that age, but neither did we want to have the child all of a sudden move from a crib and put in another room and traumatically affect this child because we didn't allow for this transition period. So what we said was mobile infants, and the key word here is gonna have to be mobile. At the minimum of 8 months, may be put on a mat during the transitioning period of crawling to walking. If such a mat is used, and I went out to the internet to look to see what is available out there. I do not want, and I don't think it's appropriate for this little tiny piece of mat. It's like I talked to the providers. When this was discussed, the mat was discussed a long time ago. I remember a piece of foam rubber brought into one of our hearings to the hearing officer with a plastic bag over it. And this was, and the individual, the provider was arguing that yes, she did have mats. This was her mat. Well, that's not appropriate. So that's why we tried to be so very clear. When y'all were talking mats last time, that's what I thought. In my mind, that's what I thought. Was we did not want to encourage this kind of thing out there. So I went to the web to look at, okay, what is actually out there available that will work, that may work during this transitioning period, that we can set a standard for. At the very minimum, this is minimum standards. And what it was a 2-inch mat purchased, commercially purchased vinyl sleep mat, designed for the purposes of sleeping. And then I went further to make sure that we clarified it, that there is not gonna be holes, chips, frayed, tears, or stains on these. So I think the department can live with that. That seemed to be a major concern in us being able to move these regulations forward.
Ms. Vickey, now, if we transition into the mats on the floor at 8 months, because when they go into the 1-year class, at that point, they do receive a mat. With their mat, they get a blanket, and if a small pillow can fit into the 2 gallons of like bag that we put them in, they can have that small pillow. At 8 months, will they be allowed to have the small blanket, the small pillow then?
You know, you're asking me a question, I'm gonna have to go back and.
I wouldn't think so,
I
because
wouldn't
the
think so.
regulations.
If it says
no.
no for infants in the crib, you know, that's
It
why I
would,
was
to
asking.
me, common sense would say.
It's
you know,
on the floor, so.
It would just be on the floor so they could, when they wake up, they would be mobile instead of in the crib where they have to stay.
The department does our best to use the advisory council as a bouncing board of what is best practice out here, you know. We don't want to be unreasonable. We do want to move the standard of care for children forward. But yet the department is going to be very hesitant, like I said earlier, to go against something that's already stated out there with CDC.
Yeah.
Normally, y'all's rooms are required to be maintained at a certain temperature. Maintaining those rooms at a temperature, I think 68 degrees or so, is going to be, you know, especially if you've got 5 or 6 children in there. Probably adequate as far as, and not needing that blanket, but I also know I'm a mother. That I cannot remember a time I didn't have a little blanket tucked around my little baby. I mean, I understand the mother in you and the mother in me is speaking. But I realize now, a lot of things I did when I was a mother might not have been the best. It's just that it made me feel better because I was the mother. And you are gonna be dealing with the fact that you've got mothers that have always wrapped their babies up. And they're not gonna understand that this baby doesn't have a blanket around them. So I do understand your concern in having to deal with it from that end. But I would be hesitant to say.
Oh, I completely agree with children past that swaddling stage. They can wear their rompers and stuff in the cribs, but when it's at 8 months and transitioning to the floor, when they transition to our floor, we do it at 12 months, and we do give them the blanket now. that's why I was asking the question regarding they're moving to the floor at 8 months. At that point, will they be allowed to have a
Normally,
No, they're still an
if you
infant.
stop and look at your CDC guidelines, the CDC guidelines indicate that most babies that die from SIDS die up to age 1. After that age 1, I think the feeling is that children are much more able to lift their heads, they're much more able to breathe on their own, their chest muscles are stronger.
I agree.
So,
I
at that
agree.
point.
My question is regarding swaddling, regarding the blankets, but whenever I saw the 8 months, that's why I was wondering if the rule changed.
No, ma'am. Any other?
I did, cause I don't have a dog in the race for the pack and play, so I don't have any preferences on that. But my understanding with pack and play is that, and cause pack and play is an actual brand, I mean, it's the Graco brand, it's the pack and play, right? The other, is it like a pack and play style?
I put designated
My daughter's
for
25, I've never bought one of those. So, is it?
I don't think it's just Graco brand. I
Okay.
think Pack and Play is several different brands, but that's why we put specifically in here, whatever used, if it was used and it was in the form of the Pack and Play, it had to be designated
For sleeping, so it will say that where, and it
They
says here, it needs to be
they say it
commercially
on the-
purchased, which to me means not donations and not bought at a thrift store, but you have to commercially purchase one, which means you'd be buying it. I don't know if it should say if it's purchased new or not, but the only issue that I have is y'all are gonna think I'm crazy anyway. I know that we have Montessori programs, and that Montessori programs, do things differently. And I feel like if the Montessori programs will be breaking this rule if they follow Montessori's, methods. And I know that there's 2 Montessori programs in Jackson, but I don't know if one of them has infants or not. But I think that there should be a clause in there that will say for approved Montessori programs to have, Montessori approved, sleeping beds. Because theirs are like,
Make sure that's right,
different.
because the regulations.
Oh, I mean, it's the equivalent of, have you ever seen the Montessori beds? Well, they're on the floor. And so it's the equivalent of a small bed. It looks like a little sandbox on the floor that's got a mattress in it. But the Montessori programs, have it from young infants, like brand new infants swaddling, all the way up to the ones moving around. And it's a method of education that is, it's a very structured and real method that is used, and they're not gonna change that. So this is gonna require them to break the regs in the Montessori programs that are part of, that are licensed.
Can I say something? She pointed out pack and play, some of the companies call them different terminology. We may just need to find a unit, one word, or something generic that covers stating that type of unit with the pack and play, because that's generic too.
Well, and it might be
And
that you say that word
it's
and then in
commercially
parentheses put example, pack and play or whatever.
It just may be a wording.
Aren't they called portable cribs? Aren't pack and plays called?
No,
No.
no.
Well, they're different companies call them different.
Portable cribs are like the ones you and I were looking at
With
today.
portable cribs, that's what we needed to, but that wouldn't be
But
an answer to.
our whole goal in this right here is the unit is approved for sleep. We get them every day, and they're play yards, play pens, play this, play that, and it says not intended for sleep. And then they're in the facility, so we need to come up with some terminology here.
Yeah, we might be able to come up with some here, sleeping.
Okay, we have a hand in the back.
I'm kinda asking a question, cause I think when the regulations changed for the cribs and everything, it was based on, regulations, right? Okay,
Federal law.
Federal law.
so, I mean,
Federal law
and
doesn't say you have to have
but I'm
it.
just saying, if it's for the safety of the children, I don't think that they should be allowed to have something different.
I can tell you that whenever the crib laws changed, I visited Montessori programs because I was strongly considering going away from cribs. And I really loved it. I just did not think that I could, invest the time in having those done and dealing with any repercussions I might have because we went away from cribs. and educating my teachers where they were all on board with it, because most teachers are familiar with cribs, and it would be very difficult to teach them, and Montessori programs have to go through like a year-long training before they are teachers in a classroom.
So you're telling me there's actually a type of crib used out there?
It's called a Montessori bed, they're not called cribs.
It looks like somebody took some one
Box.
bananas and
And
made
it
a
is a
box.
box.
out of it.
That's what they did.
What box?
Well, wait a minute.
Well, that's why I'm saying it, because we're doing everything based on medical findings and all this. I mean, it's pretty much like watching TV. You know, if they said that they don't need to be,
Well, I can assure
you know what I'm saying?
I can assure you that the research behind the Montessori beds is very solid, and it is very beneficial to young children, from the very beginning, from day one.
Right, but I'm,
Something that we,
And it was one of the things when the crib thing started coming out, before we were looking at the regs, but we were just looking at the crib. That was something I brought up at a meeting, and so that's what took me to a Montessori program, to see what it was. We don't have a Montessori program.
is that something by chance that we could visit and a group of us get together and look at for the next meeting or the next
That's good, because
advisory?
I don't have any
I
problems.
don't have enough information personally to try to
I'm just thinking ahead, if there's any people that want to, oppose this because of that.
Just a quick question. Now, are these beds federally approved? Ready?
that's
Well,
what I'm
they're not
getting.
cribs. They're
Okay,
not
so I'm
cribs.
saying, are those beds approved by the federal government for child care?
I
Or
have
do
no
you kn-
idea.
Let me make, I don't know about that either, but now, understand that the federal requirement, as I understand it, doesn't have to do with the fact that every child must have a crib. It is that the cribs that many of us were using do not meet federal standards.
Right.
So the two things are separate.
Yeah, I think it's with the federal standard was dealing with the drop side on the cribs.
It was saying that some of our cribs are not meeting regulations, federal regs, and we had to have new cribs to replace the older cribs.
So the pack and
So-
place itself has nothing to do with the federal regs.
Okay.
And the Montessori schools are few and far between, because I only know of 2 in the Jackson area, and there's probably just a dozen or more in the state. So I mean, I'm not even talking about the general public. There's one
Some of
here.
those do not have.
And I don't know how many of them have infants.
Pack and play
Okay.
is just a general name. I've 3 pages and I've already found 9 manufacturers.
right.
If I chose to decide to use a Montessori crib, that would be okay.
Well, it would not be a crib. It would
Well,
be a
whatever it
if
is,
you
if I
chose
chose-
to have a
The box, the box,
So
the
you have a
box.
Montessori program.
Y'all
No,
get-
but if I chose to, regardless, I should have that right if they can do it. If it's,
See, and that's what we're talking about too, is do they have the right to use those beds that they've always used?
Well, what this says is all input, the way it's written, and the way y'all have recommended it, all inputs shall have a crib or a commercially purchased pack and play designated for the purpose of sleeping. And then it does allow a mat for transitioning. Now, this was an issue that did not come up before,
Yeah, we didn't talk about it in the regs.
yeah, so it has not been researched, and I don't know what the department, I do not know what the council would wish to do at this point with that. That's why I was asking, was that an area that could be reviewed with us taking under consideration that there is a group out there that may have a type of bed? Is this a religious unit, a group?
No, Montessori is an educational style. So Montessori school is a school that follows Montessori practice. And it's named after Maria Montessori in Italy, from a long, long time ago.
It's just a method of education.
Yeah, my suggestion would be that we would do this.
It's another
curriculum.
It is.
You know, it's like another curriculum.
Decide about the pack and play wording, and then if this comes up later with other consideration, possibly a sentence or something could be done in as far as what Montessori requirements would be, or if it would be allowed.
you got
It should be allowed.
Yeah, because you got other schools too. What does the original reg say? Does it say infant
shall all have a crib? It
What
doesn't-
you had proposed first,
I'm saying with the original reg.
Now, what do you mean by original?
No.
You mean
The
the
ones
first
that-
one,
the first-
like for this time?
Not for this, but the
The
old
ones
one.
that we're
The
currently
old
implementing.
regs.
The old reg.
Cribs are used.
Because if you don't have to have a crib, that means the infant can
Cribs
sleep
shall be
on
made of
anything, but
wood,
now we're
metal,
saying.
approved plastic, that's what you're
it never says it must be
Well, it's
crib.
Yeah.
No, it does not
It
say
says
the
if
original
cribs
regs,
are
or
used.
the old
It
regs,
says crib.
that every infant must
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
The original is if cribs are used.
Well, that means that an infant can sleep on a mat then, or either a box. I mean, that's what it's saying. So now we're saying that all of them have to have cribs. So
Except
maybe
for
y'all
one.
need to go back to the old regs and just kind of revise it to fit what y'all want it to say, because right now you're saying that all of them have to have a crib. Yeah, you see, Montessori was approved through the old regs because they can have infants.
That's really the whole point of that.
Yeah,
I don't think
it's
that's fair.
basically
The pack and play is the issue.
would do. The way it's written now, I
The
think
package
would go.
plan allowing the map for transitioning, which I think we
Well,
may
that's
have
good.
missed that concept of what the providers actually was asking to do. Is the reason that it came back to me to say, will you work with the providers, will you get with a group of us that actually are doing this?
It's my understanding that the Montessori item, from, I haven't seen it to date, but it's my understanding that it's commercially approved for sleep, so we allow it.
Oh,
Well, would it also state on it if ours
yeah,
have to
do they come
that
with
it is
compliance?
approved?
Oh,
Because
then-
ours have to have it on there.
So then I guess the wording of that whole thing would change.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that
Oh,
all
yeah.
infants shall,
I mean, and that's what I really didn't understand at first too.
This is me, this is what I do. The director may be somebody
Certified.
different from the certified food manager. You may have a cook, and that may not be the director. So it could be the same person, it could be different people. So if she's the only director on site, and she's the so she's gonna have to be there. So it could either or,
But you got more than one person certified with,
if you do.
yeah, in food, preparation.
Donna, can you address this? 'Cause I think this is-
That got me totally confused.
I mean, I see it, I've gotten totally confused about what you're asking.
We just need to have someone who's a certified food manager there when the meal's being cooked.
Right, it doesn't matter who it is.
I think it's good.
Because we're reading it
Read is a certified food manager shall be present.
during meal
During
preparation.
meal preparation, period.
Period.
And then just leave off everything else.
Okay.
All right, wait, y'all, one more time.
Well, I was just, like, I'm the certified food person, and we only have one, and I'm usually there all day on a some kind of meeting like that. But in the event for those people who do just have one certified who goes to get the certificate, and they're ill one day, what you're saying is nobody can substitute, because when I went to the meeting and they were telling me how to prepare food, they were telling me, well, maybe if you could make simple menus, so when you are out, someone could follow your menu and prepare the food like you prepared, so it would taste the same. So we saying now, most centers have, like, at least our center has one, I don't know.
Yeah, I
who
think
go and
that
take
would
the
fall,
training.
kind of fall like if the director was sick and you have someone who fills in. As long as you have someone who does have some training in food service. Because, you're not gonna be paying them more money to be a certified food manager just to fill in when someone is out sick.
So it look like to me the wording.
If not, would you please show approval by raising your hand? Okay, it's passed.
All right, the other area that caused a lot of concern, and I realized during the board meeting that in essence, a lot of this came about due to misunderstanding. The department had a major concern regarding the 15 passenger vans being utilized in licensed daycare centers. And we wrote that they would be prohibited. And a lot of our providers interpreted that would be any vans. They really didn't recognize or realize, and frankly, I didn't either, until I got in board meetings and got to listening. This regulation or the prior requirement was specifically for 15 passenger vans, and the reason for that is our agency had received information regarding the fact that the 15 passenger van was built on the 12 passenger van chassis. In essence, what that was is it left 4 additional feet in the back of the bus. That every time or I can't say every time, but there had been numerous incidences where that extra 4 feet caused the bus to sway once it went into a turn, and there had been numerous accidents due to it, but it was because of the fact of the build of the vehicle. So the agency's intent in proposing the first time the prohibiting of the 15-passenger vans was for that reason, and it was not to say that the 12-passenger or the 9-passenger vans couldn't be used. A lot of our provider community, we didn't explain that well to start with, and a lot of our provider community thought that could not be used also. But what we did was, we deleted the requirement to the 15-passenger vans, is what we are proposing, you know. It never was in the language prior, it was some of the proposed language that we did present. So we are going ahead and deleting that 15-passenger van requirement. Our understanding now is there is a kit that can be bought and put under those vans that will stabilize that back 4 feet. So there may be a mechanism that actually would work for that. But the biggest confusion with that, I think, came from the fact that we didn't educate our providers well enough, and they thought it applied to all vans. That you couldn't buy a 9-passenger van, or you couldn't buy a 15-passenger van, which was gonna be a major cost to the provider. And I don't know that we really understood or realized that until we got into the meeting.
About the 15-passenger vans, and this is many years ago, and just like I said, about that long 4 feet out there. And I've had several mechanic sites, you know, like if you're gonna load, heavy load towards the front. And I was thinking that with our children, you know, they don't weigh that much, and to sit on that back part, they would not sway. But he was saying just don't let heavy people back there because it could, you know, get out of control.
And that's what is, you know, that has been discussed even since with the weight. Most of the incidents that occurred due to the fact that there was adults in the back of that van. And our facilities are transporting small children. The agency was just being very, very cautious in trying to make a recommendation to prevent this type of thing. But we are recommending at this point that we go ahead and delete the requirement that we had proposed regarding the 15-passenger vans. There is mechanisms to take care of this issue, and as you said, y'all are dealing with it.